Joining me now by phone is my colleague Rachel Maddow, host of The Rachel Maddow Show here on MSNBC. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us this Saturday morning. What do you make of Trump's latest post? He's made a lot of claims and called for his supporters to protest other things in the past, but is there something different about this one?
Jonathan, thanks for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't get in to the studio in time. I wasn't expecting this on Saturday morning. I think that we have to be measured in our response to this, just because we don't, as you so rightfully pointed out, we don't have any indication that Trump is responding to some, communication from the DA's office or some act within the criminal justice system that we, the public, don't have access to. It kind of seems like he's just responding to NBC News reporting yesterday that law enforcement agencies are preparing for the possibility that he might be indicted. He's just kind of yelling at the TV. So I think it is possible to overinterpret what's going on here. Mm-hmm. But that reporting for NBC is real, and the prospect that Trump might be indicted is real. And so with these posts, we know what his response to that will be. We don't know what his response will be in the courtroom. I don't think we've had a clear view of what his legal defense is going to be, but his overall defense is going to be to try to raise the civic cost of indicting him. He is trying to bring intimidation and pressure to bear against the prosecutors who are considering right now whether to indict him. And he's hoping to create fear that there'll be another January 6th type event, or his followers will go shoot up another FBI office, or something else that he could cause to happen by asking his followers to go into the streets in his defense.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I love that phrasing, raise the civic cost of indicting him. And I'm just wondering, it's hard not to recall January 6th when you read a post like the one he put out this morning. And I want you to talk further, how concerned are you, and should people be concerned that Trump's supporters will see this as a call to action?
Well, he's trying to make it that. I mean, one of the things that I've been sort of poking around, thinking about, and trying to do some research on this week is trying to quantify the number of public officials and former public officials who get arrested and indicted for stuff. And it's taken me a few days, and I've been poking around at it for a while, because it's essentially an infinite number. There are so many state senators, big city mayors, governors, members of Congress, former members of Congress, statewide elected officials of other kinds who get arrested and indicted and thrown out of office and occasionally jailed. It just happens all the time. And it's not the end of the world. It's not even the political end of the world for some of those figures. I was looking back at Huey Long, who I think is one of the historical figures we've got in this country who's most analogous to Trump in terms of the effect that he has on his supporters. And Huey Long, one of his great laugh lines, one of his great applause lines at the sort of apex of his political career, when he was getting ready to challenge FDR in 1936 before he was assassinated and then wasn't able to do it. One of Huey Long's great laugh lines was about how many times he had escaped indictment. How they'd try to impeach him and they'd try to indict him, and it just made him stronger and stronger and stronger. Getting arrested, getting indicted, even going to jail isn't the end of the line. It isn't the end of the world. But Trump is trying to make it that. He's trying to make it so that there is a threat of uncontrollable political violence in this country that would be triggered by any act of the legal system against him. It's his effort. There's nothing intrinsic about him getting in trouble as a potentially public corrupt figure that should cause violence. But he's trying to make sure that it does. And the question is whether his followers do it.
And, to that point, you anticipated the next question I was going to ask you. Given this long history of public officials up and down the roster being arrested, and some of them viewing it as a good thing, using the number of times they've been indicted as a punchline in campaign speeches, is this good for Trump politically? Because he is, right now, a declared candidate for president.
Yes. I mean, I think that he's banking on it being something that helps him. But he is playing with a fire that he doesn't know how to contain and that nobody knows how to contain, right? I mean, I think it is a little unnerving that his first political campaign appearance for his 2024 run is in Waco, right? We're at the 30th anniversary of the Waco standoff, right? If you're talking about trying to engender militant consciousness among Americans about the need to fight the federal government with violence, well, Waco's a nice place to try to do that from. That's a nice resonant place to try to do that from. I mean, him being indicted on, on a charge related to campaign finance, tax and business fraud, again, doesn't have to be the end of the world for him and could potentially be a positive for him. But if he's asking for a militant, racially tinged, violent response from his followers, that's something that won't be good for him. You know, January 6th is not good for Trump's political legacy, for all the other things that it is, for all the other things it means for our country. It didn't make him more electable for coming back as another term as president. And so he's trying to start something that I don't think he can take responsibility for how it will finish. And so I just don't think it's wise on his part, just a pure political strategy, for him to be calling for what he's calling for.
Rachel, let me get you on one more thing. Just yesterday, YouTube reinstated Donald Trump's account, which means he's now back on all major social media platforms, including Twitter and Facebook. Granted, this post was on his own social media platform, but should those companies regret the move to reinstate him and giving him access to millions of Americans?
Well, I mean, we'll see. I think those companies are in a bit of a crisis of conscience right now in terms of what their business plan is and how much they want to benefit from undermining the democracy that makes it possible for them to thrive as companies. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think companies like Facebook, Meta, and Google and YouTube, they need to figure out whether or not they're going to let a nihilist like Elon Musk set the tone in terms of what counts as corporate responsibility for something that really does have the possibility to unlace our democracy in a way that's irreversible, or whether they have a sense of self as companies and a sense of responsibility for who they are and what it takes, what kind of legal environment they require in which to operate. And I'm hoping that there'll be a reckoning on their own terms and they won't be forced to act like they were after January 6th.